Now, recent flooding in KwaZulu-Natal has left 24 schools damaged with infrastructure failures, making it nearly impossible for students and teachers alike to continue learning. Many schools are inaccessible due to road damage, while others have flooded classrooms and collapsed ceilings. The Department of Education faces severe financial strain in addressing these challenges. NAPTOSA Executive Director Basil Manuel unpacks the challenges some of his constituents are having to deal with as a result of this disaster. Basil, good to speak to you. It would be nicer to speak under different circumstances. But let's start off with the number of schools that have been affected and what type of damage has been reported. How has it affected the learners and also how it's affected those that you represent, the educators?
Hugo, good afternoon and thanks for having me. The situation is dire because it is not only about the rains recently, but of course it's been a build-up. Summer has been very, very devastating. From Mpumalanga all the way down, we know 34 schools in Mpumalanga late last year, and almost 50 schools in KZN. If you look at the compounded number, the number from the past 2 weeks, and then of course a little earlier on. And then add to that, schools that still haven't been fully repaired from the floods of almost 2 years ago. So we are talking about a large number of schools. But added to that, it's the infrastructure damage, which also now prevents schools that are not damaged from reopening safely, because children have to cross little streams that have become raging torrents. We know there have been mudslides, and the reports we've had from Pinetown, New Germany, Lamontville, Kloof, and then even moving to the south coast and along the M4 highway have been stories of hardship, where if a family has been displaced, children can't get to school because that family has gone elsewhere to look for shelter or has gone to live with relatives. And then the child is just simply too far from school. And then, of course, the damage to the school books and things that the children had with them. Those are some of the last things you grab. So, Hugo, it's a humanitarian problem. Exacerbated, of course, also by some tardiness sometimes with help coming forward. And we certainly hope to see that in this week, as calm settles, there'll be much more activity and help to try and normalize for as many children as possible the school-going experience.
You raised some critical issues there, Basil. Now, one of the things that we were talking about only moments ago with the Philamthembu speaks to the movement, continual movement of those that have been displaced. So he spoke to some families that have been relocated, put in a shelter because of the floods, but have moved in the last few weeks 3 to 4 times. Now, this can only have absolutely traumatic implications on young learners.
Absolutely. Hugo, it's that impact because you don't know where people have moved. You don't know how young the children are. Some of them are grade 1s and grade 2s. And for them to then traverse the distance, first of all, the cost when parents' lives have been disrupted, it's things like that that are really devastating. Add to that the loss of simple things like clothes. We take it for granted, but these children just can't get there. Then, of course, we have to also remember that as soon as the rain starts falling, panics start setting in. And we've seen rain almost every day. And when you've separated the children from the safety of their parents, there's trauma. And of course, even if the child is bigger and can get to school, it's always the worry about, can I leave my mother, can I leave my siblings and go to school? So there's a loss of learning and teaching time. Many schools were closed on some of those really, really bad days. And then, of course, the general losses, which are devastating.
Just walk us through the challenges that the educators themselves have. As a result of these floods and the movements. And I'd also like to place a little bit of emphasis on what you just talked about, which is loss of teaching time. A few weeks ago, we were celebrating matriculants that graduated with all levels of passes. Is it too early to talk about an implication on matriculants, in particular, the class of 2025, those that are losing time and may continue to lose time because these floods are going unabated?
Hugo, let's start with that part. It's early in the year. So loss of time can be caught up as the year progresses, and that is what we hope will happen. But there are so many other dynamics that have to be attended to. The classrooms have to be repaired. The access to the school has to be repaired. When we talk about teachers and the impact on teachers, we must remember teachers are part of the broader community. Some of the teachers themselves have been impacted by washaways and threats to their homes, etc. And then there's access or the lack of it that is preventing teachers also from getting there. So their lives are just as disrupted as the general community's lives. And they always try to get back to mop up. And our advice has been safety first. Time we will make up. We know that we are not losing months at a time. We are moving to winter shortly, where the rains will decrease, and then there is more time to do some catch up. But first of all, let's get ourselves safe. Let's see that our learners are safe. We've advised principals as well. Please keep parents up to date with what is happening near the school. Some children have to go many, many miles to a school, and let them know if the situation is not safe. Let them know if you've heard about damage to bridges, damages to transport routes, etc. And this has generally been happening. So, fortunately, we haven't seen the loss of lives of children, and we haven't heard of any teachers. But that whilst there's comfort there, it is not good enough because other things in the general livelihood of people has suffered, and suffering continues.
Basil, are there long-term plans to strengthen school infrastructure against extreme weather? I mean, this is a conversation we probably wouldn't have had 5 years ago, but because it is recurring to the point of every few months, particularly in KZN, it almost makes it important to have the conversation.
It goes a little broader than that, Hugo. We've got to have a conversation about our types of infrastructure, starting there. The types of bridges we build, the types of roads we build, the permissions that are given for construction to happen without rehabilitation of banks that can wash away and, of course, cause further damage. That, by extension, includes the schools, where schools are built, the types of materials used, and whether, of course, the existing schools we have are safe, because they have been battered. We do need to see a team going around to assess the safety of the current schools, as well as start the conversation about how do we build now for the future to withstand the ravages of climate change.
And finally, just what assistance can be given to learners, schools, from or by the public and private sector to assist in some of these challenges that they're facing?
I know that there are some of our organizations like Gift of the Givers and so on that are being very active. They need the assistance because they have the machinery which can distribute to people in need clothes, dry stuff, foodstuffs that are the non-perishable types of foodstuffs, and of course also assistance with the things learners need at schools, such as writing material, etc., because some of them have lost all these things. And thank heaven it's still the early part of the year where catch up and making up all these things again is not insurmountable. But it is still a difficult time. Let's support those people in any way we can.
Basil, I'm tempted to ask just one final question, and that speaks to what can the more privileged members of our communities do, particularly the privileged schools? What do learners in those schools that aren't suffering the effects of such inclement weather do to assist? So whether it's books, stationery, shoes, for instance, to assist those in some of those communities that have been devastated?
That's exactly what I mean when I say the community must. I include the schools. There are schools that are in better locations. There are schools that are better off. And there are schools that can assist the teachers and the learners of schools close by that have suffered from these ravages of climate. And we're calling on all people, everybody with a heart. Let us stand together. In times of difficulty, we need to stand together so that those little children's experiences, as traumatic as they are, the trauma is lessened by the thought that somebody else did care.
Basil, Manuel, NAPTOSA Executive Director, always good to speak to you, and calling on everyone with a heart to do whatever they can to assist many members of our communities, particularly those learners in KZN, especially that have suffered the trauma of this devastating floods. And as many as 70 schools are still struggling, not having been repaired following floods from recent times. And that's obviously had a compounding effect